If you think about what market capitalism was set up to do, in the most fundamental sense, Adam Smith's idea, you take everybody's savings and you funnel it through financial institutions into new businesses, which hire people and grow the economy. I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. But if you look at the numbers now, that's been changing over the last 40 years. So today, there's some really deep academic research that shows that about only 15% of money flowing out of financial institutions ends up as new business investment. The rest of it is basically in a closed loop of trading of existing assets.
This is the rent, if you will.
This is the rent.
Right.
I mean, it's a fraction of the money of our savings actually is getting invested in new businesses, and I think that that's one of the biggest unexplained causes of slower growth. Really,
what happened? Why is that the case?
Well, there's not one thing. It's 40 years of policy changes and bipartisan policy changes, I would add. A lot of this gets kind of blamed on Reagan era deregulation, the rise of Wall Street in the 80s. That's part of it, but basically, since interest rates were deregulated under the Carter era, you could argue that there have been a slow series of shifts. A lot of deregulation under Clinton, changes in the way corporate compensation was paid out that led to the stock buyback boom that we see now, which increases, I believe, short-termism in the markets. Lots and lots of things. So there's not one silver bullet, but basically you now have a financial sector that creates only 4% of all jobs in the country, but takes 25% of corporate profits.
How do you know it's not deregulation, but it's the regulation that causes people not to lend?
Well, problematic regulation is part of it, but I would argue that that's only happened at the tail end post-financial crisis. I think there's a lot of problems with Dodd-Frank, but this phenomenon's been happening for 40 years. If you look actually at the rise of finance as a percentage of the economy and new businesses, you can make a line. New business growth starts to flatten out and fall post-'80s. So there's a real problem with entrepreneurship associated with all this.
And this is what I imagine is the rise of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that this book, if I may say, explains both Trump and Sanders in a way, because people look out and they see wages have been flat across the board since the early 1990s. I mean, working class white men, the Trump votership, hasn't gotten a raise in real terms since 1968. Sanders and Trump are really the same side, or different sides of the same coin in that sense. The establishment model for a lot of people is not working, and that's why we're seeing such populism.
So is capitalism, is it that capitalism doesn't work, or capitalism is we're just living it through a broken version of it?
It's crony capitalism.
It's crony capitalism. It's what we have now is not what capitalism was supposed to be. If you think about, Adam Smith's time, it was small, mid-sized, family-owned businesses.
You got to figure out what induces and allows the crony capitalism, and I still think it's that regulation and deregulation.
I think money politics is a big part of that. I mean, you've got to get, if you look at who the top lobbyists in the country are, industry by industry, the financial sector basically flips off with big pharma every year. So there's just the Wall Street Washington corridor is no joke, right?
And buys on the other side with unions.
There's certainly on both sides. This is a bipartisan thing. I don't want to say that I'm not blaming the right for this.
Usually just the first thing you bring up, too much deregulation, too much corporate involvement, and then I have to induce you to say, oh, yeah, well, there are the other side of things. That's a Time Magazine approach to this, I think.
Well, actually, if you read my book, it goes much deeper than that. I think that there are problems with things like business education, the way we're actually teaching corporate leaders to think about the world of industry. Basically, finance is the core curriculum in MBA programs now. There's very little focus on industry. I think, I grew up in Indiana in a small Rust Belt town. My dad runs a small manufacturing business. I think we need to focus on the makers. I think we need to focus on the people that are really, growing jobs and creating business.
We've got to figure out how to do that in a global world, though, where labor's cheaper everywhere else, and we don't want, maybe you don't want the Trump approach with tariffs and America first and the xenophobia and everything else, but then again, maybe you don't want the notion that we just let whatever happens with free trade and globalization, we let it happen and come what may.
For sure. No, I mean, I think that that's a big part of this. I think the conversation about trade right now is very much a part of this conversation. The establishment system, the system of the last 40 years really isn't working
we do know that, there's some basic tenets of capitalism that are essential. And when crony capitalism gets in the way and when government sort of tries to jigger some of the edges of capitalism, that can ruin the entire process.
Listen, I think capitalism is the greatest way of creating wealth ever in history, but you've got to make it work.
But how do you make it work? That's the question.
I think
it's already working.
One bit of low-hanging fruit.
It isn't working. Let's admit it.
It's working.
The current system it's not working very well.
It's not working.
Better than the alternative, but not working brilliantly.
Yeah, 2% economy. $4 trillion of monetary stimulus.
And you look at the quality of life in capitalistic countries versus socialistic countries. I mean, I don't even know how you can.
Oh, we're not arguing for socialism. We're arguing for a
well,
kind
you're saying
of capitalism.
Capitalism's not working. It's raised
That's right.
tens of millions of people from abject poverty to middle class.
Listen, this is an argument I'm actually not arguing for. I think capitalism is a great system, but I think we need to tweak the rules to make it work better.
I don't know
for
whether,
everybody.
you know, maybe you need to tweak the rules so that there's fewer rules where actual capitalism can flourish.
Well, to answer your question, Andrew, I think we need to look at the tax code. Right. I think that we need a tax code that subsidizes savings, investment, and equity rather than debt. I think that'd be a great place to start.
Hey CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be smarter about your finances. You can subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me or the I right here to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.